In Part 3, we explore what happens when Clarify Ed tools shift from occasional use to becoming part of classroom routines, and how that ripple effect shows up in conversations, confidence, and student results. In this episode, Geoff and Dallas share the impact they're seeing in assessment, clearer, more focused evidence of learning, and stronger summative products. Geoff describes how stacking clarity packs and check-ins throughout an outcome helped students build toward richer literary critiques, thanks to a series of small victories that made the learning progression feel achievable for everyone. We also look at how these tools stretch far beyond curriculum outcomes. Clarity packs are helping teachers articulate what competencies like collaboration look like, while also supporting the development of student-specific goals. And finally, we dig into one of the biggest shifts: assessment. Timely feedback through Clarify Ed check-ins is helping students level up within the same class, sparking deeper conversations with teachers and peers. Increased clarity also makes it easier for educators to recognize evidence through conversations and observations, strengthening professional judgment and reducing reliance on traditional types of assessment methods, which in turn creates time for meaningful, responsive assessment. If you're curious about how clarity transforms not just learning, but teaching, you won't want to miss this conversation. Let's rejoin Geoff and Dallas. Welcome to Northeast Voices, a podcast that spotlights the innovators and change-makers in education. We're here to share the stories of inclusion, empowerment, and the impactful connections with the Northeast School Division and beyond, focusing on the pivotal role of students, families, and teachers. Join us as we dive into the conversations revealing the strategies and moments shaping the future of education. Any Voices is your platform for inspiration and connection, and is recorded in the Northeast School Division, sharing the land of Treaties 4, 5, 6, and homeland of the Métis in Northeast Saskatchewan. Be sure to subscribe and join our community of innovators and changemakers. Let's get started.
So are you seeing better products at the end, or better, or not necessarily products, but summatively when you go to make a decision, and you may not have to have a product or something, you could use all of the information all the way along. Do you see better results at the end after using Clarify
They're
Ed?
just so much. I mean, one, they can go back to those check-ins and take the questions that it's given them to bump it up and go, oh, I'm going to talk about this a little more. But it's just, one, it doesn't, for those kids who are bad at ELA, there's small victories everywhere in here. So they can be like, no, I can be a 1 or I can be a 5, or there's nothing to stop them from that. Where lots of times before, it probably felt like there's no hope here, because it's not about a learning progression. It's either I have it or I don't. And so I think that's been a big change, is I'm seeing products where I go, oh, it's pretty clear now. Like, I wish for years when I did a literary criticism essay, I wish I had been this clear on what I wanted in it. So it's helped my clarity too, right? Like
Yeah. I was just going to add, like, you can break any skill down. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be curriculum focused. Like, you can focus on working in groups, right? Like, you can put your learning intention as peer collaboration, and it'll generate what success looks like for working in a group or giving a speech or whatever, right?
I just used it for a success fund, for a goal, right? This is what we're learning. I'm not going to make that student do the check-in, because that wouldn't be, but it gave me a very clear goal of what I wanted that student to look like. And it gave me a lot of the things that I wanted that student to commit to doing. Like, it doesn't, you can make as many classes as you need to make, and they don't have to be specific. You could make one for a specific student about something.
Yeah, that's a cool idea, Geoff.
Yeah, that was, it helped me create the success plan, I can tell you.
I like it.
Well, and a nice piece of using a tool that's designed for education is, I mean, you could use any AI, but here, all of those prompts and kind of the filters and what makes it return really high impact results is it's tailored for education. So if you know what you want, the skill or the competency or the goal that a student is working on, it can generate those ideas and give you strategies that you could choose that might be helpful, and maybe not, right? It might depend on the situation if you're narrowing it down, but what a fantastic way to use it for students where you're looking for ideas of how do we do those things? Because I think we all know as teachers, once you kind of start with some of the ideas, then that just sparks other ideas. You're like, oh, and that could help us over here. So any other pieces that either of you would like to add in? I do have I think you've covered the question I had about when. You talked about we can use it at the end, we can use it at the beginning. You've also talked about how you're using it during the class so that they can level up within the same class. So it's not about waiting until tomorrow to get better. One wonder I did have was feedback. You both talked about how they're starting to read the feedback and engage with it more. How did you help students to not just, I think we've all had students who kind of look at the paper. You spend a lot of time giving me feedback on the paper. You've written all over it. And I go, that's nice. I'm done with that. And I put it over there and it's gone. So Clarify Ed gives them that instant feedback, which maybe they agree with sometimes or don't agree with. How are you helping them to engage deeper into that? Because you both talked about how you're asking different questions, the students are engaging more deeply. So how did you help facilitate that along the way?
I think that's one area that I could probably grow and try to help my students more with, right? Like I've sat down with some students that are struggling to go through their feedback and, maybe they can't level up and you have to sit down and really go through the feedback and be like, well, are you sure you're doing these types of things? But it may be a good clarity pack to try, and using how to use the feedback part of the tool.
Yeah, interesting for me is I basically last year didn't know I could see the feedback they were getting, which made this a very uninteresting tool for me. I'm like, oh, what did it tell you? And they would kind of not say anything. And I was like, when we went to our first meeting in Warman and they were showing that I could see the feedback, I was like, oh, I've been using this so wrong. Like,
There's
I was
so
like,
many more things I can do.
oh wow, this works. Oh.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was big for me just to be able to see it, because before I would go through and read their responses, but it was hard for me to know what they were judging. But when I realized I could see the feedback they were given, then I was like, okay, here's our next steps.
And in the end, it's not really about the score that you get. It's about this is helping me to know where I'm at. And I made a claim and did I support it? And I did or I didn't. And what can I do to get better at it? Or how do I use that information to ask my teacher for more support on that? Or I need to target a certain type of skill. When you get the feedback from the check-in, how does that shift what you do in the classroom now as opposed to what you might have done previously? Like, are you seeing, I guess my question is, based on your use of Clarify Ed, is that shifting how you're teaching and interacting with students? And if it is, what's an example of how it's shifted?
Well, I mentioned it before, but we have just gone away from the tasks. We're getting big into the building thinking classrooms here too. And I've been loving to use this with Clarify Ed. And like I said, we're doing this literary critique or whatever. Well, the last one we did was about plot. So exposition, whatever. Well, we'd finished reading the novel. We divided the kids up into groups. And I said, okay, write out the exposition, the initial incident, the climax, the rising action, write out all the points. And I sent a video to one of our superintendents and said, I've never had my 10, 11, 12 this engaged in learning. And then we sat down at the end and did a check-in, right? So they've been given all this prior knowledge, and suddenly I was seeing higher scores. So it's before I'd have given them some kind of assignment and then got it back and went, you haven't learned anything, and now I sit there and go, wow, we're all kind of learning at the same time, and you can see the progression of it. So it's neat.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. Like the whole, giving worksheets or working out of a textbook, like when you have the learning intention and the success criteria and the examples and the questions, well, you can just, use those and do some more building thinking classroom type activities and stuff like that. Yeah, the focus has shifted, right, to more learning and not doing. And this is a great tool to help with that for sure.
Yeah, I agree completely.
And do you notice the language the students are using is shifting away from I'm doing to I'm learning, or are they asking you different questions?
I'm not sure the language is changing yet. I think that's going to take a long time for that, but they are asking different questions. Like they're more connected, I think. I mean, if you look at this, when we were doing the visible learning stuff and we had that chart, just having a clear learning intention, the students knowing we're doing this, so we learn this on a daily basis is has the biggest impact, or some of the biggest impact out there, right?
Yes.
And now that they're clear on they're learning this for this, it's much easier for them to understand and to engage with it.
Yeah, I would agree. It makes like me as a teacher more intentional, right? Like way more intentional and transparent with students. And it just seems like I'm able to align things a lot easier in doing this.
Turns out we all like to know where we're going and
Yes.
how we actually know that we get there. Building Thinking Classroom sort of flips it around a little bit. We don't always outline every the exact
No.
criteria when we start, but that comes in the consolidation phase. So whichever approach you take towards that, it still pulls that all together so they know clearly where they're at. One last thing before we wrap things up. You talked about lots of products, and quizzes would be where we'd be say, does this count? And is that, how many marks is this? And I think both of you have mentioned conversation observation. So have you seen a shift into that more balanced assessment where you're feeling more confident to say, I had a conversation with a student and I know they have that success criteria, or I've watched through this interaction and they have that? Are you seeing a shift in that part?
I've seen
Right.
a shift.
I was going to say, yes, I feel like I'm able to walk around and see things, see the success criteria and make note. And I'm not having to, do a quiz every third lesson or things like that. Like you're able to see, and looking at the check and you're able to see where they're at, and you don't need those hard copy type quizzes that you're marking all night.
Oh,
Why?
yes. So it saves teacher time.
Yes.
I know as an English teacher, I mean, we just did curriculum unpacking, and I sat there and went, I am so guilty of being the person who saw compose and create and went, it's writing. It's writing. Everyone's writing. We're just going to do writing. Well, look at how many of those kids I am limiting who struggle with writing, struggle with communication that way. And so suddenly using the check-in tool and using the clarity pack, I'm able to go, yeah, they're not a great writer. That's holding them back. But I know they understand this and I know they understand that. And it allows me to be far more accurate in my professional judgment.
Yes.
If you'd asked me last year to professionally judge, I could probably tell you it would have been a lie because I wasn't at the same spot I am now. Right now, I have a
That's
much
a really good point. That's a really good point of the professional judgment piece, right? Like if they score poorly on a test, but you can see their journey of how their learning progression has gone through the success criteria, you can make that judgment a lot easier for sure. And you have the evidence, right? There's the
Yes.
evidence there to support it. So,
And you could pull that up and have a conversation with the student and say, tell me a little bit more about that. And that doesn't require you creating another exam or a separate time to write it. You can have that conversation and know within seconds or within minutes where the student's at. And it more conversation and make connection engages with students. So one last thing you had mentioned in Warman that day, we were having the conversation. If people are hesitant to do speech to text, I think one of you had talked about you were at a convention and there was something about non-dominant hand. Do you want to just share that?
Yeah, one of our presenters had us write out things we loved about fall, and we went and wrote them out on paper. And then she wanted us to do the same thing over again, but using our non-dominant hand. And I mean, my regular printing is bad. So when you go with my non-dominant hand, it looks like a kindergarten student writing it. And so we got done and she pointed out how many of you were focused on the question, and probably 90% of the class was focused on just forming those letters. And I did the same thing with my grade 10, 11, 12s, the ones who were hesitant with speech to text. And I just said, okay, once they got done and they were all saying, oh yeah, it was really hard to do. We were thinking about forming the letters. And I said, there's a good percentage of you in this classroom on a daily basis that are focused just on forming the letters, finding the button to type, and that's stopping the learning. And one of the wins I had first I gave them an assignment where they all had to go use it because then it wasn't embarrassing. But the next day, one of the boys went back to typing it and he said, I don't know how to spell. It was in History 10. He said, I don't know how to spell mechanism or something. And I said, go use speak to text. Why are you struggling with it? Like, why struggle with thinking about how to spell it? Because you can't explain to me what you're thinking. if it's just all about the process. And I think we have to be really outspoken about this to students, that for many, and I mean, we have to be honest with ourselves. For many years, we have used writing as the be all and the end all of communication. And there's just, I would bet 70% of our kids struggle with it. It's one of the hardest skills you learn in the world, to transfer information from here down here. So let's give them the grace to say, no, we can speak to text. We can use that because we're wanting to see what they know. And
That's how I was introduced to the speak to text tool. Actually, I had a student that came to me in class and was like, I'm struggling to get this formula and down into words. And she's like, can I use the speak to text feature? I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing, but
Yeah.
it's been a game changer in class, especially with math. It's been awesome.
So we've just kind of run through how we're digging deeper into clarity. You've heard both of them mention the engagement is changing, the questions are shifting. It's easier for us as teachers to come up to use the feedback and to help them move forward as a group. The students are using the feedback, that you captured a shot of them super engaged in their learning, more engaged than you've seen in the past. As we wrap this up, what's one thing that's already made an impact and one thing that you're excited about to look forward to in the year? Or we're almost halfway through, so in the next part of the year.
I'm excited to use more of the other features of Clarify Ed. Like I just started using the peer observation tool and looking at making the action plan and things like that. I'm excited to see what else it offers and learn more as it expands what it's capable of, I guess.
yeah, I'm with you on that. I was, like I said, was at Curriculum Unpacking and was showing some people in there the new like peer observation and how that could be used for sprints and all this stuff. And they were like, wow. And I was like, yeah, like it makes it so robust and it takes out a lot of those steps. And I'm really excited because it's allowing me to think of different ways to work. Like I think I explained to Chris Chittick that I feel like it's the start of the 60s and I'm about to let my freak flag fly. Like I am just going to go out there and into new worlds and try all kinds of different things with it. And that's really what I'm looking at it. Like it's got me away of my bad practice. And I'll be the first to admit it. There was lots of it. And it's made me think about it again and go, boy, I wish I could have gone back and done this differently.
It's also exciting to hear, others that are this excited about it. And like the whole peer observation tool, we had a couple other staff members that tried it out and they were like, man, this is so much easier. Like it provides the strategies, it just takes away a lot of the extra thinking like you talked about and the research and all that kind of stuff, because it gives you high impact research based strategies and things to you try in your classroom, right? So yeah, it's been great.
And there are actually articles and information in there as well, that if a teacher's curious about, why does think, pair, share actually make a difference, or why is this a high impact strategy, you can actually go in and look at some of the research. They've pulled all of that together. So with that, we appreciate that Dallas and Geoff joined us on a busy afternoon in December, and we hope that our conversation has helped you out. We're hoping to check back in with them in the spring after they've had a chance to try out some of the other features within there. And please reach out if you have any questions about Clarify Ed or you're wondering how that's working within their schools. We can put you in contact. So thank you so much for joining us on Any Voices today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Take care, everyone.
As we close out this 3-part conversation on clarity, let's pause and recognize just how far the journey has taken us. Not just in theory, but in practice, in mindset, and in the lived experiences of students and teachers. In episode 1, we began by grounding ourselves in the power of using outcome-based success criteria to generate learning intentions that are focused on a lesson or a bite-sized piece, versus starting with the entire outcome. The idea that when students know exactly what they are learning, what success looks like, and why it matters, everything changes. Dallas and Geoff both spoke about how shifting from whole outcomes to granular learning intentions transformed their planning and made classroom conversations more focused and meaningful. It also increased the effectiveness of the check-in. In episode 2, we saw clarity move from planning into practice. We explored how the check-in invites students to make a claim, defend it with evidence, and reflect deeply on their learning. We heard Geoff and Dallas share how voice-to-text tools supported students who struggle with writing, how strategic questioning helped learners identify the level they were working at, and how timely feedback and feed-forward empowered students to level up before the end of the class. Geoff and Dallas described students who once struggled with the reflection, now actively reading their feedback and using it to grow. And now, here in episode 3, we explored the impact of clarity and what happens when these routines become part of the workings of the classroom. First, students are producing stronger, clearer, summative work at the end of the outcome. Learning progressions give them small victories, step by step, helping even reluctant learners build toward complex tasks like literary critiques with confidence. Clarity isn't just helping students succeed, it's helping them to see themselves succeed. Number 2, timely feedback and feed-forward is accelerating learning. Students can revise immediately and level up within the same hour, as well as take ownership of their growth. The shift from delayed marking to real-time improvement is reshaping how students engage with learning. It's also enhancing the conversations students have with teachers, because students have already dug into the feedback and feed-forward and are now having more intentional conversations with their teachers. Number 3, reflection and conversation are richer and becoming more student-driven. Instead of what are we doing, students are shifting to not only what am I learning and where am I in this learning journey, to also asking how do I know what evidence I can use to back up my claim. Teachers are seeing deeper thinking, stronger evidence, and more impactful student self-assessment. Clarity is not just improving results, it's improving the learning conversation. Number 4, professional judgment is stronger and more accurate. With clarity packs and check-ins making learning visible, teachers feel more confident using observation and conversation, not just product-based assessment. Clarity has given teachers the confidence to trust the evidence they see and hear in different forms, and know that it meets the outcome-based success criteria and aligns with the intent of the outcome. Number 5, assessment is becoming more balanced. Instead of does this count, students are thinking about not only the ways they can demonstrate evidence of their learning, but also reflecting on where they are at in their learning journey. Teachers and students are gathering more robust evidence as learning happens, freeing up time to focus on the learning and strengthening relationships. Across all 3 episodes, it's clear: clarity impacts learning. It changes how we plan, it changes how we teach, and it changes how students learn. And ultimately, it changes who the students believe they can be. As we wrapped up, Geoff said he wished he could go back and teach certain units again, now that he understands how powerful clarity can be. Dallas also shared how clarity has made him more intentional, more transparent, and more aligned in his practice. Both educators and administrators described classrooms where students are more engaged, more confident, and more empowered to take the next step in their learning journey. And as education and the tools we have access to continue to evolve, here's the wonder. What if? What if we considered clarity not as one more thing on our plates, but as the plate? The structure that holds the learning, supports the thinking, and amplifies the success of every student we serve. Whether it's crafting a focused learning intention, using questions to guide students through the learning progression, or offering actionable, timely feedback and feed-forward for students, each time we focus on improving clarity, it thoughtfully engages both students and teachers in deeper learning. Thank you for joining us across this 3-part series, and a special shout out to Dallas and Geoff for sharing their experiences. If you're wondering about something we've mentioned in this series, check out the show notes below for more details. Thanks for listening. Thank you for joining our community of innovators and change makers. We hope the conversations and stories have ignited a spark within. We'd like to express our gratitude to our dedicated Northeast educators. Until next time, remember to subscribe to Any Voices and join us on the next episode as we share the stories of learning shaping our future. Thanks for listening.